Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Developing the Leader Within podcast. I'm Enrique, and today I am so happy to have with me Rich Farley. He is a human performance and human error professional. He's working with Fantail Services, and we're going to be talking about leadership and human performance and some other things that will enlighten you about that arena. Rich, first of all, thank you for being with me today and sharing your time.
Thanks for having me, Enrique. It's an honor to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity. So thanks very much.
Thank you for being here. Folks, there's a lot to be learned in what is called human performance. And Rich, I know that you're about to throw some knowledge at us and get us up to speed as best you can. But tell us a little bit about how you got into it and what you're doing with it.
You bet. So I have my background is interesting. I look at it like a quilt because there's a lot of things that I've done in my professional career. I've had such wonderful opportunities, which all started with the United States Air Force. So I'm a 27-year veteran in the U.S. Air Force, retired in 2014. I came in 86, 87 timeframe, and I worked in the maintenance career field for about 5 years, and then cross-trained into combat rescue. And there I was what's now considered a special mission aviator. At the time they called them flight engineers, and MH and HH-60 flight engineer, and we did combat rescue and special operations. And so I had the honor of flying in that community for a little over a decade. At which point I finished grad school, and then I became a what's called an aerospace and operational physiologist. That's kind of the biomedical science core of the Air Force, or one of the positions within the Air Force, biomedical science core. And that's where I really got into kind of the official realm of human performance. And it wasn't until I got into that space where I realized that I've been practicing human performance philosophies and methodologies my whole time in the Air Force. And so it was a subject matter that was very near and dear to my heart. And I jumped in it with both feet and had the opportunity to work with some amazing people that taught me everything I know today, to be honest. So I did that for about 13 years or so. I worked with acceleration physiology at the centrifuge. I worked with F-16 fighter operations at Luke Air Force Base for about 4 years. I worked with the Air Force Safety Center, which is their kind of command for all things safety and safety investigations for mishaps and accidents, those types of things. And then my career finally ended up, believe it or not, with the Aloha tour at the Pacific Command in Hawaii. So at that point, I was like, I don't think I can really top off this. It was a blessing to be able to go there and do some great work at the Pacific Air Command. So it was a really interesting ride, and I learned a lot. At that point, I went on to the civilian work sector. I had an opportunity to work with a nuclear and non-nuclear power generation company, Arizona Public Service, great company. They've been around for, over 100 years, and creating energy for a large portion of the Southwest. And so I worked there, and their corrective action program and their human performance program kind of stood up a little bit of their newer human performance efforts. And I did that for a couple of years, did some consulting on my own, and then had this really cool opportunity to go and work with Mitsubishi Aircraft Corporation. And they're a aircraft design and flight test organization, and they were building a new aircraft. And so I had the opportunity to work with a bunch of folks and stand up a safety and human performance program within that organization as well. And now I've got the opportunity to teach again with Fantail Services and some of the great things that they're offering organizations across the world. So it's been a great ride, and I'm looking forward to what the future holds.
Well, that's an outstanding history there. And there was one piece that made me smile because I had a 13-year Aloha tour.
Yeah.
So I know exactly what you mean by being blessed to have been there. Definitely my one of my final destination type of places.
Yeah.
And what a tour. But so we're talking about specifically leadership and human performance and human error. And so, first, can you explain to us what human performance and human error is?
Yeah.
And then, more importantly, because there are some facets of it that really do impact leadership, and the lack of being able to manage some of those things really affects organizations. So, let's talk a little bit about that.
You bet. So that's kind of a super broad question. What is human performance and human error? So I kind of like to just dial that down a little bit and just say, human performance is how we behave and act physically and cognitively every day. There are several sciences that kind of guide us in that space, and it's whether it's on work or personal time, how we function as a human being, here on Earth. That's what encapsulates human performance. Far too often, organizations are, they're focused on the product and maybe not the process. And what I've found in my professional history is that in a lot of cases, they not purposefully, but just unknowingly to folks, they don't necessarily focus on the human being that's actually performing the work, and those challenges or those everyday issues that workers face, whether they're at work or at home, things that affect them at home that eventually can affect them at work as well. So we take a look at human performance kind of from a fundamental point of view. We look at some of the sciences that garner human performance, and then we also look at human error too, and we define what that is. Human error are simply mistakes. They're not purposeful. Nobody goes out and knowingly wants to make mistakes. That's a whole nother realm within performance. But we want to look at error as learning opportunities. So we kind of break that down, and we look at error even deeper with regard to active error and latent error. And I don't want to get into the weeds too much about that, but a lot of organizations, particularly leadership, they might not understand the reality that a lot of the error that's occurring in their organization is more than likely stemming from latent, dormant conditions that they themselves can fix, but they don't know about it. They're unaware. So what we like to do is to teach folks, pull that curtain back and say, hey, this is what we're going to look at from a human performance point of view, and then remind folks these are some things that leaders need to be able to understand and act upon within the organization, because we know that leaders influence the people that are in their organization. That's what makes them a leader, right? And so it's what they're systematically paying attention to that makes a difference. And in a lot of cases, they just don't know what they don't know. And so part of what we're trying to do is to bring that to the forefront of their cross-check and educate them, give them some information, or what I refer to as decision quality information, so that they can better manage their day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year errors, increase efficiencies, and ultimately, conduct safer operations.
Wow, Richie, you mentioned this one word, dormant.
Yeah.
And it just made my hair stand up, because a lot of the things that we see today have been there for a while, and they've just been laying low, and then just adding and adding. And then all of a sudden you have an issue, you have a problem that arises, and you're wondering, where did this come from?
Yeah.
And that dormant stage in error is so critical, and it takes a lot of attention on the leadership side, attention to be able to see those things come to play, or hopefully grab them as soon as they start sprouting up. So it brings me to attention management, right?
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things that, so situational awareness. So how does situational awareness, uh, achieved? Because you got to get there, right? You got to get situationally aware.
Yeah.
So how is situational awareness achieved and maintained?
Yeah. Great
And
question. Great question. You know, so a lot of communities look at situational awareness as potentially just an individual capability. Um, I like to look at it as both an individual capability and an organizational one. And so we want to focus on that organizational situational awareness. But essentially, situational awareness is being aware of, having an accurate perception of your surroundings, being able to forecast what you think might happen based on those awarenesses, do a quick risk assessment, kind of go through a checklist of if this, then that, and then make the best decision possible and then act on it. And this is a very, in some cases, a remarkably quick process that we go through all the time. For example, when you get in your car first thing in the morning, you got your coffee in one hand and your keys in the other, and you're kind of going through your mental checklist of, okay, I'm going to start the car, put my seatbelt on. You're going through these kinds of things. What are some of the other things that you're noticing with regard to the environment that you're about to go into that will help you build this awareness of, hey, how am I going to get from point A to point B safely and effectively, efficiently, without incident? And so that's kind of what situational awareness is in a nutshell for individuals. But let's talk about organizational situational awareness. How do leaders, senior leaders at an organization of hundreds of people, what are they looking at from a macro point of view, and how are they building that decision quality information every day? Sometimes on the hour, at a shift change, night shift versus day operations. There's dozens and dozens of different things that we should and can be looking at to build situational awareness to help us walk through that model and basically understand the threats and hazards that are out there, maybe not only for individuals, but for teams and the entire organization, and then combat them in an efficient manner. So that's where we're going with regard to the situational awareness education.
Outstanding. That you bring a great point. Most of the time when we're talking about awareness, we're talking about ourselves, and there are different stages of awareness, and you have to be keen to all of those stages, especially at the leadership level. That number one, they exist, and that you're a participant in those.
Yeah.
So given the climate that we're in, because there is a lot going on, and especially now, I don't think I've heard about mental states and mental health as I have heard it before, but not as much as it is today, because there's been a lot of worldwide change all at once for everyone. So there's a level of fatigue that has been built up.
Yeah, for sure.
And it definitely affects human performance and attention spans and just all kinds of things. So in the realm of fatigue management, what is human fatigue, number one? And we kind of know what is the body fatigue, but what is human fatigue, and how does it in a sense affect both individuals and organizations?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point, Enrique. Probably one of the biggest contributors to error, quite frankly, is fatigue, unmanaged fatigue, human fatigue, and that is just a lack of a lack of sleep or some type of circadian dysrhythmia, or a mental, too much mental or cognitive work that's simply mentally fatiguing and or physically fatiguing. And one of the things that we want to focus on as well is just, I'm not convinced that organizations are getting a kind of university level understanding of fatigue and how it affects their employees and ultimately what they're doing at their organization, whatever it is they're making or processing or constructing, the operations that they're conducting, any of it. I'm not convinced that they really understand fatigue at a level that they can, again, make really great contributions and decisions based on that information. So one of the things that we're doing is we're looking at fatigue risk management. And the best thing to start, or best place to start with that, is through a sound education. We discuss what human fatigue really is, how sleep works. Raise your hand if you're human, right? We all need it. And so, how does sleep really work? And how do, threats to your sleep or not prioritizing good rest and sleep, not only individually, but organizationally, making sure folks understand that, how does that affect the bottom line? From a safety point of view, from a cost effectiveness point of view, like in terms of rework, human error, those types of things. And then ultimately operational and potentially reputational risk if you wind up with, God forbid, a fatal mishap or a mishap that costs a lot of money and winds up on the evening news. So we want to look at fatigue risk management in such a way that it's systematic. One of the things that I've seen is that a lot of companies might think that they have, their hands around the fatigue issue. But when you really peel the onion back a little bit further, you recognize that maybe the fatigue system or program that they have in their organization is, a few lines in a policy that's, 5 or 6 years old. It hasn't been dusted off very, very much. New employees didn't even know it was there. It's not necessarily a behavior that leaders are demonstrating throughout their day-to-day operations. What we want are leaders to pattern a behavior that the rest of the team can see and reproduce. And so within the realm of fatigue management, that's a really important thing. And so it's a lot more than just getting, a few words on paper saying, hey, get enough sleep at night. And, here's your hours that you can work, and make sure you're managing your life on the outside of those parameters. I think it's a little bit more than that. And I think we as performance specialists we owe it to folks to teach them, to tell them, hey, there's a lot more to this than what you might think. And the more information and education you have, the better off you'll be when you're dealing with fatigue related issues.
Yeah, you're spot on, and you're talking, and I'm thinking about my last 2 weeks, right? My last 2 weeks have been you talk about fatigue. Not only mental fatigue, but emotional fatigue, and then there's physical fatigue. And I've been running around left and right. Sitting here talking to you, my hands hurt from all that I had to do. But
how did that affect your sleep? Just how did the last 2 weeks of your life, the life stressors that you've experienced, how did that affect your sleep?
Yeah, no, my eyes burn, so that'll tell you. So it definitely disrupted a lot of my normal day-to-day pattern because it's just external stresses that you don't make room for. You don't, right? So, so as you talking, I'm like, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. But you also mentioned risk management. Because as I'm thinking about all the things that I've been through the last 2 weeks, there's a lot of potential for errors and for all kinds of stuff, really. um, but more on the side of risk, and so you learn to manage risk. Um, but what is risk in terms of the scope of what human performance, human and organizational performance?
Yeah, so we all face risk in our lives. There's hazards, and then there's risk. Hazards are those things that will hurt you, and risk is kind of the probability, if you will. And this is an in the nutshell kind of explanation. But risk is the probability of that hazard potentially hurting you or damaging equipment or harming, organizational reputation, whatever, a financial risk, any whatever the hazard is, or the threat, if you will. And so risk is really the probability. It's managing probability. And so how often do we see organizations managing the probability of risk with humans with regard to their performance in their everyday job? We see really wonderful efforts within the safety community to try and identify hazards and manage the risk. But I would challenge folks to deliberately approach risk in such a way that you're measuring it in an understandable way throughout the entire organization, so everyone from the top to the bottom of the organization understands what the hazards are and the risks associated with that, and what it's going to take to reduce that risk to what we refer to as a level that's called as low as reasonably practical, or as low as reasonably tolerable by senior executives within the organization. We live in a world that, it's hazard laden world out there, man. There's a lot of stuff that will hurt you, that will damage equipment, that will kill us, quite frankly. And we constantly have to have this understanding of what those hazards are and how to manage that risk. So we kind of get into some discussions about individual risk assessments and then formalized risk assessments. Individual risk assessments would be ones that you and I would make every day. Like the example I gave, getting into the car. I personally walk around my car to make sure that, hey, do I have a flat tire? I have a big Jeep, so I'm looking at, is there a cat sleeping up under the, is my dog resting under the thing, under the Jeep getting shit? So you do a quick walk around, you're looking at hazards, that kind of thing. Then you make a risk assessment. Hey, I should be good to go. Let me back out. I'm good to go. I'm press on. You constantly do this. That's kind of that individual risk assessment. And that's tied into that situational awareness model that we were talking about before as well. But a formalized risk assessment is one that organizations make. And that's where you start to objectively, purposefully manage risk through writing them down and identifying them. Like, what does risk mean to one organization is going to be something totally different to another organization. And so have you defined what those risks are in your organization? And if you have you written them down? Have you codified them or measured them in a way that's agreeable to everyone in the organization? And now you have your risk, your inherent risk. And then you want to be able to discuss some mitigation strategies on how to reduce or completely negate the risk involved with the identified hazard. And then you end up with what's called a residual risk. And now you can measure those things. And believe it or not, when you do that, you actually start to start knocking some targets off the fence, so to speak. And you start to manage and mitigate risk. And without a shadow of a doubt that you've got objective information and data that you can look at to say, yep, we addressed this, we identified this hazard, we addressed it, we looked at it, we plotted it into a risk matrix, we understand the risk that was there, we engaged with mitigation strategies, and we formalized those, we've written it down, we know what we did and when we did it, and who we did it with, who's responsible for knowing those things, and the list goes on. And now we can monitor if that's working or not. If it is, great, let's continue that behavior. If not, let's make adjustments as required. And then at the end of a period of time, you say, hey, did we meet our goal of mitigating this risk? And then leaders can get together and say, yeah, this is no longer as high as it was before. That's an acceptable risk. Remember that term ALARP, ALARP, as low as reasonably practical or tolerable. So it's a tolerable risk or a practical risk. And you can move forward with that. You're saving money. You're increasing levels of confidence throughout your entire employee group. The reputation of your organization just increases exponentially because people are like, hey, these guys care about the workers, the people that are actually doing the jobs. And it just goes a really, really long way with regard to performance optimization across the board. So risk management is an extremely important aspect to any high risk, high reliability organization, for sure. So that's one of the things that the Fantail Group, we focus on that. We want to look at a tailored risk assessment, hazard identification, and risk management process, as well as some, continued coaching throughout a period of time until the organization has a good grasp on it and says, we got it. And then we're like, rock on. Next, let's tackle another one. So that's kind of where we're at with the risk management thing. And I feel compelled to say that I can't really read this, but up here we're actually having an executive summit. I believe 21 through 23 June at a resort outside of Austin. The information will be, I think, on the podcast, and you can kind of see it right here. And we're offering, this education and so much more. Leadership. Fundamentals, methodologies, concepts that folks may have never heard before, taking experience from literally decades of military and high risk, high reliability organizational experience, and just brain dumping that on our brothers and sisters out there in the workforce, because we owe it to you.
Outstanding explanation. Yeah, I was just about to ask you about that logo and the summit that's on your background there. If someone, because half hour doesn't give us enough time to get you some stuff, and I would love for people to talk to you and talk to Fantail and even ask questions about the summit. If someone wanted to do that, how would they do that?
Well, they can contact me on my personal email, rich.farley17@gmail.com, or on the Fantail email, which is just rich@fantail.com, or certainly contact any of the other people, associated with Fantail. John Minyard, which I believe his email is john@fantail.com. He's kind of our point of contact and one of the co-founders of the organization. And we've got some incredible talent with the team, and I can't speak highly enough about the level of professionalism and experience, the depth and breadth of the folks that are working on this team, as well as the openness and desire for the entire team to want to get out there and share what we know with the rest of the community. We're chomping at the bit to get rolling with this. It's great information. A lot of people don't get the opportunity to see it. We had the honor, quite frankly, of having several decades of training and experience and knowledge and know-how, and all the courses. As you remember, in the military, you're a lifelong learner, so you're constantly getting training and education. And we want to take that and bring it to communities around our country. So the Fantail Group is a great group of folks.
Outstanding. Look, I could listen to you all day. And folks, if you are interested in human performance, the human error, any of the things that we covered today, please reach out to Rich. Rich, I'm going to have that information you shared as part of the video and show notes, so people can get a hold of you all, and go to the Fantail website. I'll also have that link part of the show notes and video. Rich, thank you so much. I'm excited about this summit coming at the end of June, and looking forward to hearing more great things from Fantails, great things from you, and everybody. You know how we love to end this show. Success to you.
Thank you so much, Enrique. Thanks, everyone.